There's a rising epidemic that's happening. There's people that are getting further and deeper into debt, especially when it comes to student loans. What are your options? What are the things that you can do? Do you feel a weight on your shoulders? Do you wish that these things were different? Are there options that you could take?
Let's put more money in your pocket, increase your financial IQ, and create more peace of mind, clarity, and certainty in your life. Welcome to Money Matters, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we tackle the money topics that matter.
We're going to have a discussion about what can you do, whether it's about restructuring, refinancing, whether you should pay this off, whether you shouldn't pay this off, what the best methods are to pay this off. Because if the objective is, I want to get rid of this as soon as possible, maybe paying extra isn't your best bet. Maybe there's other ways to provide more safety, security, and liquidity along the way. So what is your objective with your student loan? We're here to help you get the most efficient method of reaching that objective, understanding how these programs work, what it takes to get them resolved as far as not having to pay them off because of a loan forgiveness type of program, what it looks like from a modification standpoint, or whether you should defer interest for a time period, or if that's going to be dangerous. So, big topic, and what I've brought in today is Tim, I think I'm going to hurt myself, Carden. All right, now Tim is someone that I've known for quite some time, and we started talking about this financial world over 20 years ago. From a very small coal mining town of Carbon County in Price, Utah, as far as where we met, he's actually from Cincinnati. He's someone that really understands this at a deep level. I was in Austin, Texas. I was getting up giving a presentation to a large group of employees of a company that we work with and talking to them about student loans, and I just said there's not a whole lot you could do. And then Tim just raised his finger and said, well, there's actually a lot you can do. Got up and gave a bunch of suggestions. So I brought in the right expert for this today. Tim, glad to have you here on the podcast. So let's just talk about the student loan issue as far as what can people do, what are the different types of programs that are out there, and hopefully enlighten people a little bit.
Yeah, there's basically about 10 different repayment options that exist. Some of them are going to be income-based and some are going to be asset-based repayment options. And what you really have to do is get clear on what is my overall strategy as far as which one's going to fit for me best in each individual. So if you're trying to start a new practice or a new business right out of the gate in college, the student loans can crush you right out of the gate. Never allow the business to even grow, because if you have $200,000 to $300,000 in student loans to get a medical degree or a law degree or something like that, just the interest payment alone would crush you from being able to capitalize that business.
Yeah. How crazy is this, by the way? It's so easy to get a student loan compared to about any other loan out there. But you have all these people getting a student loan, then they want to start a business when they get out of school, and they can't get a business loan because of that student loan. The only asset behind the student loan is whatever education you have, and how practical is that education in what you're actually going to implement. That might be another question. So just a little, rant I had to go on there for a second.
No, and it's exactly what's happening to many, many Americans is they're graduating with a tremendous amount of student loan debt, and it's crushing them from ever getting started. They don't get their peace of mind fund built. They don't have any safety or security. They're not able to capitalize a business. And so if that's the scenario, then we need to control cash flow as much as possible. So you're going to go into one of the 6 options for income-based repayment. That will allow you, most of the time they're going to say, okay, what's 150% of the poverty level? Any money you make above that is considered discretionary income according to the student loan department.
What's the poverty level?
It's based on a per person rate, right? So like a single person, the poverty level is if you make around $12,000 to $15,000 a year, depending on your zip code, because they do give some consideration. I mean, if you're in New York and making $15,000, apparently you're above the poverty level.
That'd be tough. When you have fees for the tunnel.
Exactly. So the poverty level is quite low. They say 150% of that, any money you make above that is considered discretionary income. And then your payment, depending on the income-based repayment plan, will be either 10 to 15% of that extra income. That will be where they cap it, or they can cap it at a 10-year repayment, principal and interest repayment amount.
All right, so just to recap this, make sure I'm understanding it. We take the poverty level, and then we say above 150% of that, you have to start paying 10 to 15% of that additional income they're calling discretionary income towards the student loan as far as income repayment plan.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's usually your best option for controlling your cash flow. But let's break that down into real life. If you're making, let's say you start a new practice or new business out of college, your first year you clear a profit of $50,000. If your poverty level with 150%, let's put that at $20,000, they're going to say that you can pay about $3,000 towards your student loans that year, right? Because that
total or per month?
Total, yeah. Right? So $250 a month. Well, if you're sitting on $250,000 student loans, which is not uncommon for us to see, especially with many medical fields, you're not even scratching the surface of the interest payment, right? And
so it's a negative amortized loan. It's actually growing in balance at that point?
It will grow, but here's the trick. You make sure you recertify your income every year, and the interest you're not paying doesn't capitalize. So it's not going to grow how much the interest is based upon. It'll keep it in two separate columns. So if you had $250,000 of principal and you didn't pay $5,000 in interest, the next year you're not charged on $255,000 for your interest. You're still only charged on the $250,000.
So it becomes interest-free additional principal you'll owe?
Yes.
So they're not charging you interest on, let's say, $5,000 if that's what it grew because you didn't make enough payment.
Exactly.
But you still owe that $5,000.
Exactly. And as long as you cap it or recertify your income every single year, then that interest doesn't.
Well, at least they keep it simple. I mean, God,
that's the whole.
Like we're just starting here,
that's
right?
That's the whole model is simplicity, right? And so.
Sarcasm for those that can't sense it.
Yeah, and so if you forget to recertify one year, though, that interest capitalizes and now becomes part of the original principal for your interest payment.
So you have to recertify, which there's different kind of like middlemen that you talk to in this, because there's the government that's doing the student loan, then they're using private contractors essentially that are these, loan intermediaries, and based upon who that intermediary is, you have different rules. And they're really being trained to get you off the phone as quick as possible and not necessarily do what's right for you. So that's why it's important to understand this so you can do what's right for yourself and not just take advice from some private company that's essentially, paid for how many people they could churn through more so than doing the exact thing that's going to benefit you the most.
And we see some scary advice there too. When you actually do your recertification, you answer at the very bottom, you sign and say, this is a correct reporting or a correct statement of any income I earn. But we'll see some of these intermediaries say, all you have to do is claim your W-2 income. So just do a little W-2, a bunch of distribution, and don't claim that on the form to keep your payment low. And their whole goal is to get you to forgiveness at a highest forgiveness number possible, which sounds great on paper, but think about it this way. If every person that had a student loan, every single person that had a student loan got that loan forgiven, where would the whole system be? It would be a complete and total collapse, which is probably heading that direction.
Right, because anyways. We have it's like the biggest loan that's out there right now is the compiled student loans.
Yep.
More so than mortgages right now and car loans, which isn't absurd
it's
to me.
It's absolutely
it's hard
insane.
for me to actually fathom that that's the case. But let's just think about a couple things here for a minute. You have the student loan. You're frustrated about it because it feels like a weight. It feels like something you want to eliminate. But you're also looking at what's your existing cash flow. And we have this kind of what our basic situation is that if we don't earn a certain amount of money, it's really hard to live. Especially if you're mindful of certain things like how you eat, that could be more expensive. Where you live, that could be more expensive. And if you're trying to just balance life, if you're having to do everything on your own just in the name of saving money, that can actually invite in a level of exhaustion that you become less productive, you become less happy, and the whole thing starts to crumble. So I think it's important that you take care of yourself first and foremost. And as you continue to listen to this, and as we continue to bring on people and have this happen, we're going to talk about ways that you can make more money, ways that you can keep more of the money that you make, but we want to begin and really address the student loan issue because it is something that I see people thinking from the wrong perspective of how can I reduce my income in order to get a better deal on my student loan. But the reality is that's just going to exacerbate the problem long term, that the real game is that no one shrinks their way to wealth. It's a game of production. It's a game of value creation. It's a game of earning more. Even if you have to pay more, it just means you're going to pay this off quicker. So one of the things that Tim's talking about so far is the income repayment, where we're looking at 150% of poverty level. Right? Poverty level depends on where you live, but it might be like $12,000. So above that in income, they're taking 10 to 15%, where you're now applying that towards the student loan. That may or may not even cover the interest. And you're saying that you want to make sure you get a hold of them every single year to, what did you call it?
Recertify your income.
Recertify your income.
Yep.
Okay.
And what that allows you to do is you have, right out of school, you have the smallest payment possible going out, so you can use your extra cash flow to grow your business, expand your means, and be more abundant, like Garrett mentioned. And every single time you do that, when you recertify your income, you're going to recertify a higher income year after year after year. And eventually you're going to turn the flow. It's going to turn into you are making significant progress towards paying off that loan. The goal is that we grow to such a large degree in our business that we pay off that loan and it's no big deal to do so, but it didn't crush us right out of the gate.
Right.
So that's the typical plan for most entrepreneurs, is pick the income-based repayment plan that's going to allow you to control the cash flow the best, use that cash flow for growth and abundance, and you're going to end up far better off. When we see people doing what you mentioned too, where they're trying to minimize their income, then where do they end up in 20 years? Maybe their student loan got $100,000 or $150,000 of forgiveness, but they missed out on millions of dollars of growth along the way.
Well, and let's look at just a couple ideas around this. Like, what are these programs, or if they work for a nonprofit, that it potentially can get forgiven? As I did a basic research, and when I tell you my research, I watched a comedy show. Okay. And they talked about this, but they talked about some of these kind of loan administrators, kind of the middleman, they don't allow for that forgiveness. So you have to actually have one of the right loan moderators, I don't even know what the hell we call those people, right? Those middlemen, otherwise you might not even be getting the benefit that you thought. It could get denied.
Yeah, you really have to be careful when you're doing, you're picking your different plans, or if you're refinancing those loans. Some of the loans you got qualify for forgiveness, some of the loans you may have taken out didn't qualify for forgiveness, but you thought they did. And so you need to get clear on which loans you have that qualify for forgiveness, which ones don't. And if you make any changes, make sure that that doesn't either reset your clock or take that clock away completely, because that happens to people as well. With the nonprofit situation too, there are some people that are saying, go out and start a nonprofit, right? And then that way, if you work 30 hours a week for that nonprofit, your student loan forgiveness happens in 10 years. If you're not already doing a lot of charitable work, and so you're having to increase a 30-hour extra justification a week in a nonprofit, let's do the math. If you go out...
Minimum wage? I mean, what are you really getting on this?
If you had like $250,000 forgiven in 10 years because you did a nonprofit and you worked 30 hours a week for 10 years, you're about $17 an hour for that effort.
Right, $17 an hour, plus it's not 100% guaranteed that they're going to allow for it. We've seen reports on this, so you got to be really careful. So look, we've got to do another segment just on student loans, but let's just give you some of the bottom line advice here. One, be careful of getting so encompassed in this and engulfed in your student loan that you stop living your life. You want to invest first and always in yourself. Increase your skill set, your ability, and your ways that you could deliver value in the world. Number two, make sure you still build up your liquidity. You want to save at least 6 months into savings to cover basic life expenses in case there's financial surprises, health challenges, you name it. You want to have that staying power. I call that the peace of mind fund. Then, you want to make sure that you're earning as much as possible and reinvesting back into a business if you started a business, or into your career. What is it going to take for you to earn more money? And as you make more money, don't let how much you have to pay towards your student loan prohibit you from actually expanding your means and growing and doing the right things. Now, set money on the side. When you have enough money to pay off the student loan, pay it off in one fell swoop. We'll talk about something in the next podcast talking about cost of money and how this applies to whether you should pay off a loan or not pay off a loan. We're going to talk about how you're always having an interest cost, whether you pay cash or whether you finance. What do I mean by that? And once you discover what this benchmark is for you of your cost of money, you'll know the fastest, most efficient, and safest way to pay off loans. So in recapping here, we just want to talk about what is one of the methods that you can use to pay off a student loan, and that you want to recertify that every single year because it's based upon your income, and based upon that income, that determines how much you pay towards the loan, and that even if you didn't pay the full interest, ways that you don't have to pay interest upon that interest, which can start to really move in a negative way. And we're going to talk about what are the other types of programs inside of student loans. So make sure you tune in again for Win Then Play Money Matters. Tim Carden, Garrett Gunderson. Talk to you on the flip side.